A huge weather pattern change will be coming to the United States over the next several days, which is going to flip our weather entirely, as we're going to go from record-breaking cold temperatures over the next few days to some very warm weather as we approach the middle of September. Additionally, severe weather is a possibility today for tens of millions across the East Coast, with damaging winds, hail, and even a few tornadoes possible. And lastly, we're going to go in depth on the tropics, as we currently have an area of development just to the east of the Lesser Antilles, and also Category 4 hurricane in the Pacific Ocean that is barreling towards Hawaii. So in today's forecast, we're going to break down exactly what you need to know about the weather that'll be impacting the United States over the next 7 days. And we'll begin with what's happening across the country today. And we're actually coming off of a big day of storms that occurred anywhere from North Texas all the way back over into the Ohio Valley. There were multiple rounds of severe storms that impacted the Dallas-Fort Worth area. There were actually several damage reports in North Texas from last night's storms, including an RV that was flipped over on Highway 75 near Anna, Texas. That's just outside of McKinney. Also back over in the Ohio Valley, plenty of damaging winds, plenty of lightning across central Tennessee, also through West Virginia. Now, this is all starting to shift more to the east. Moisture is going to continue to be in place basically across the southern plains and the southeast throughout the weekend, but back over in the northeast, we're beginning to see a trough move off to the east. Very strong southwesterly flow is actually going to be in place today across New England and also across much of the northeast, which is going to promote a severe weather risk with damaging winds and tornadoes a possibility this afternoon. Now let's talk more about the weather pattern that'll be impacting the United States over the next 7 days. And to look at that, we are going to look at our jet stream and mid-level flow. This is what it looks like right now. We still have very strong northwesterly flow coming out of Canada, which is continuing to bring very cold weather into the Midwest and the Ohio Valley. That will continue through this weekend. Same thing with the Northeast. Large low pressure system is sitting just to the north of New England. And then back along the West Coast, this is where we have a large ridge that is currently in place all across the Rockies, which is keeping things warm. Now, as we go into the late half of this weekend and early next week, that low pressure system is going to move out and it's going to consolidate just north of New England, which will keep things cooler back over in New England. But eventually we're going to see this ridge build further, and there's not going to be much flow coming out of Canada or really any cold areas, which means we're going to start to see warm air build again across the Great Plains and the Midwest by Monday and Tuesday. By Wednesday and Thursday, the weather pattern is going to change a ton. We are going to be talking about a huge high pressure system in the mid and upper levels that is going to basically make things very warm across the Great Plains, Midwest, and the Ohio Valley, which basically means summer is making a return for a second time. And we are going to obviously see fall kick into gear at some point here soon, but summer for at least a moment is going to make a return. Also, a large low pressure system appears likely by the end of next week over just to the west of the Rockies. If this is able to make it over the Rockies, we could see the return of severe weather across the central and northern plains. So if that were to happen, definitely something to keep an eye on. But generally speaking, for the next 7 days or so, we're not really talking about much in the way of significant severe weather, but I do think it could make a return in the middle of September. So let's talk more about the impact that this is going to make on our temperatures. Beginning with our temperature anomalies this weekend, we still have very cold weather that is sitting across the Midwest and the Great Lakes. This will move further to the east as we go into Sunday and Monday as it moves towards New England, and our low pressure system eventually moves out of the country and moves well away from us. And while that happens, it's going to allow for warm weather to build across the Rockies and also the northern plains by Monday. So freezing temperatures, not really a concern during the work week across much of the United States. By Wednesday and Thursday, that warm air is just going to keep building. But what I think is going to happen is by next weekend, so right around the middle of September, we actually may see a period of time where we start to see well above average temperatures across the northern plains and the Midwest. And again, if this were to happen, and this could all correlate, so if this were to happen, we could see a low pressure system move over the Rockies, and it may allow for severe weather to return. With all that said, there will likely be a lot of energy in place. So this is still about 7 days from now, 8 days from now, but I do think severe weather could make a return in the long term. For the short term, though, we're not really talking about anything significant for severe weather other than what's happening today back along the east coast of the United States, which we'll talk more about here in a moment. And then beyond September 15th, things become a lot more uncertain. Now let's talk more about exactly how cold it is going to be over the next few days, beginning with today, which notice across the Northeast and even across the Ohio Valley, our temperatures this afternoon only in the 50s and 60s. That's mostly because of all the showers and storms that'll be ongoing. Temperatures in the Southeast in the 90s, even 96 over near Tallahassee, still in the 40s and 50s across the Midwest for today. Tomorrow morning, not going to be super cold, but some areas will drop near freezing in far northern Minnesota. Overall, though, we're talking about mostly frost across the Midwest. A lot of areas in the mid to upper 30s and low 40s tomorrow morning. By Sunday and Monday, temperatures will start to to steadily increase. By Monday, we're right back into the 70s across most of the Midwest, 90s across the Great Plains, and Tuesday and Wednesday will likely be some of the warmest days of the week. Look, by Wednesday, we're right back into the 80s and 90s across most of Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, and Iowa. So again, if you have any plans and you want to go outdoors and enjoy cooler weather, this weekend is the time to do it, because the warm weather is going to make a return once again. And then eventually by next weekend, we could see some really hot weather returning, possibly even back near the 100s back over in Missouri and Iowa. So it's about to get really hot very fast, but again, enjoy the nice weather while it's here. Now let's talk more about the severe weather potential for the next few days, beginning with today, which is Saturday, and we have a slight risk of severe weather in place from southern Maine into eastern Pennsylvania, marginal threat from central Maine all the way back into northern Georgia, where the biggest concern will be damaging winds, which will be scattered to numerous at times during the very late morning and afternoon. Large hail is also a possibility, up to the size of $half, and then there's also a chance for a few tornadoes. I wouldn't even be surprised if we saw a 5% tornado risk introduced to areas in far western Massachusetts, far northwestern Connecticut, and southeastern New York, where I do think there will be a slightly more heightened threat for a couple of tornadoes this afternoon. So stay weather aware, have multiple ways to receive warnings. There is a chance of a live stream, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel and click the bell icon so you're notified if we do go live. And then as we go into Sunday, the threat of severe weather diminishes. We just have an isolated chance of storms anywhere from the southeast all the way back through the Rockies and into the Pacific Northwest. So good news there. Really, the only day of severe weather for the next 5 days or so should be today. Only other chances that would occur over the next 5 to 7 days will just be isolated risks of severe weather. Now let's talk more about the timing of severe weather for today, beginning with this morning, which we have some scattered showers out there across New York and Pennsylvania. Storms will begin to fire up right around 12 to 1 o'clock in far eastern Pennsylvania and southeastern New York. The biggest concern initially will be damaging winds and hail. Any storms that stay more discreet will have a chance of producing a tornado or two. By about 4 to 5 o'clock, those storms are rolling into western Massachusetts near Springfield, Massachusetts, and also far southeastern New York near New York City. And then by 6 to 7 o'clock, those storms will continue with a damaging wind threat pushing towards southeastern New Hampshire near Atkinson and Salem, also moving in the direction of Boston and eventually going towards Rhode Island. The storms will fall apart, though, as we get closer to sunset, and by around 8 to 9 o'clock, it's just going to be a bunch of showers and isolated storms. Still will be some lightning out there, but I think generally the severe weather risk will diminish. And then on Sunday, we're just talking about some passing showers, mainly near the coastal regions of New England. And then beyond this weekend, we are expecting high pressure to build across the Great Plains and the East Coast as we go into early next week. Will be some spotty showers and storms, though, across parts of the Midwest on Tuesday. Not expecting any really severe weather out of that. By Wednesday and Thursday, coastal showers and storms across the southeast will continue, and then we're going to probably start to see the weather pick up a little bit across the northern plains and the Rockies as we get closer to the end of the week and early next week as we go closer to the middle of September. That may bring the return of severe weather, but for right now, it looks like it's going to be pretty quiet across the lower 48. Not really anything in the tropics that I'm too concerned about over the next 7 days, and nothing in terms of severe weather that I'm too concerned about over the next 7 days either, aside from what is happening today. Now, the tropics have been very quiet so far this season. However, we do have an area of development that we are watching for. The National Hurricane Center has actually downgraded this area to a medium chance now of development just east of the Lesser Antilles. That is mostly because of a lot of dry air intrusion that is happening around this tropical wave. But if it is able to develop, it could be a concern for land, including the Lesser and Greater Antilles, and perhaps even in the long term, the United States. Now, I personally think that the odds of this actually developing into anything is low, but it's a very slow moving tropical wave. It has barely moved over the last few days. I do think there is a possibility it could move into the Caribbean. If not, it will possibly go closer to the Bahamas, maybe even up the East Coast like Aaron did. So there's a couple of scenarios that are in play, but at this point, it does not appear as if this is just going to turn off to sea. It's a very low chance of that happening. I think it's a better chance it'll actually go into the Caribbean, but it also could just fizzle out by the time it gets there, especially with all the dry air that is in place. Nonetheless, we're going to be keeping an eye on this. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. If anything changes here, we'll definitely let you know. And regarding the Atlantic tropics, there's something interesting I do want to point out. This is the GEFS Ensemble member group, which basically is a bunch of models on one graphic that kind of gives you an idea of where a tropical system could go. And over here in the main development region with that area that I just mentioned, there's only 3 ensemble members that even show the remote, like even slightest bit basically of development. So there's very low chance at this point it's actually going to develop. However, there's a wave behind it that has a better chance of development. That would be sometime around September 12th or 14th. And then this right here is also interesting. This is the Central American Gyre. This is an area that we actually had a few hurricanes form last year off of. And right now there are some signals that at least a few ensemble members are indicating that something could try to develop here in the far western Caribbean and perhaps enter into the Gulf as we go into late next week, if not into the weekend. Obviously, this is still far out, too early to tell if this is actually going to happen. However, we definitely have to keep an eye on this, because if something were to form, I mean, it's a very primed environment right now, and we could have some explosive development, and we could have something like we did last year with any of the other hurricanes that entered the Gulf. So definitely something to keep an eye on. If anything changes, we'll definitely let you know, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Now, this is pretty crazy, but this is Hurricane Kiko, which is currently in the Pacific Ocean. This is actually barreling towards Hawaii. It is still a major hurricane, and it will be potentially making landfall in Hawaii in just a few days. It is not forecasted to be a Category 4 hurricane at a time of potential landfall in Hawaii. However, it will likely still be a tropical storm. Now, this is the latest forecast from the National Hurricane Center regarding Hurricane Kiko, which is going to be approaching Hawaii as we go into Monday and Tuesday. It's pretty crazy that we're going to have a hurricane with only a few hundred miles of Hawaii on Monday. By Tuesday, this will likely be passing just barely to the north of Hawaii. If not, it'll be making a very close approach. There's still a chance of landfall on some of the northern islands of Hawaii on Tuesday, and then by Wednesday, it will continue to track to the west. But notice, it's still going to be a tropical storm even near Hawaii, with maximum sustained winds potentially around 60 to 70 miles per hour. So this will likely still at least be a pretty intense storm here. Storm surge is definitely going to be a possibility. Wouldn't be surprised if we see tropical storm watches issued here very soon. And as always, thank you all so much for watching today's forecast. If you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe down below. Just a few reminders. First off, we may have a live stream later today if the severe weather gets a little out of hand in the Northeast, so make sure you subscribe to the channel if you've not already, and click the bell icon so you're notified if we do go live. Secondly, our winter forecast for 2025 and 2026 will likely be coming out either tomorrow or Monday. Not sure which day yet, but it'll be one of those 2 days, so stay tuned for that. And lastly, our next regular forecast will likely be sometime around Wednesday or Thursday, unless anything major changes with the weather that is happening right now. I do want to mention that I will be in Alabama this weekend for the National Weather Association conference that is happening. I'll actually be on a panel on Sunday. You can actually watch it on YouTube. It's the National Weather Association on YouTube, so definitely recommend you check that out. Thank you guys all again so much for watching, and we'll see you guys all again in the next video or live stream.